have to sell. It wasn't our decision necessarily, but it
Some
doesn't
rumours around
hurt.
Craig Kopchak and a number of other players.
Exactly, yeah, and the Robert Louis story to Hull KR flared up again, which now is
Let's
going to be
let's
dampening down with the way Chris Atkins
yeah, fingers
going
crossed
on.
it doesn't happen for
And
both teams really.
yeah, and so at the start of that week, Salford were the crisis club. Then with all of the churning over day after day of sound bites and comments in the papers and all of that about the Liam Watts um, saga, really, when it came to it, maybe unstabilised Hull FC to an extent. And when they're going into the game with some of the leaders out of the side through injury and stuff as well, maybe actually what happened is the off-field crisis at one team came early enough in the week that their very, very good coach, in my opinion, was able to bond the group together, get them to come out fighting, get them to come out doing what they needed to do, which was put in a performance on the pitch to reassure, because that's going to reassure the fans and make them turn up more than anything else,
Yeah,
is putting a performance in on the pitch.
but also
Whereas Hull FC had become
Salford
totally
are
distracted.
used to existing in a certain level of crisis anyway. So it's probably not too higher up their chain than they would do on any normal. I mean, they're used to having Kukash around with whatever he's coming out with. So if they can ignore that going on in the
This is
background,
small fry.
they can probably ignore anything else. Whereas the SC players it's probably rocked them more as a group.
Do you want? Is there anything else you fancy covering on this game?
No, I mean other than the obvious, when I watch the highlights that Washbrook isn't a hooker, but then that's not exactly the biggest secret, is it? But
No.
I think he's
Jez
doing.
Litton wasn't in the 19-man squad again, so I don't know what's going on there.
Don't know if he's also fallen out and he'll be on his way to Castleford before we know it. Anyway, looking to the stats in terms of the teams, more total tackles were made in this game than any so far this year, but the other numbers don't scream excitement. Salford were better at make ground 170 more metres at 1.1 metres per carry, better average gain. This must have been crucial, as otherwise both teams only made 4 breaks and Hull won the penalty and tackle success stats. What about individuals, Mark?
Yeah, Junior Sao. He basically is Salford's best player and has been for his entire time there. And every week he does something that's worthy of note. 2 try assists and 149 metres this week. Greg Johnson, who was the beneficiary of some of that, got a try, 5 tackle loss, 116 metres, 2 clean breaks. Convicted spousal will be Robert Louis. Was 1 try and 102 metres. Craig Kopchak 114 metres. And then for the losing Hull FC side, Dean Hadley did a proper mate, even though he wasn't at hooker, and went 1 try, 56 tackles, 11 of which were marker tackles. Danny Washbrook upped that tackle count full mate style and went to 57 tackles, 13 of which were marker tackles. Beretta Faremo, despite all his woes from the Hull FC fans, did make 125 metres. I suspect all of that was running out of his own end and none of it was at the right end of the field. Scott Taylor, 43 tackles, 114 metres, so he worked really, really hard and he probably is going to have to do picking up the slack for his old mate Liam Watts.
Yeah. So
Um,
moving on then to St Helens on Friday night, where it finished St Helens 20, Leeds 28, in front of 11,482 people, refereed by Mr. James Child.
Yeah, so Swiss Cowboy on 78, Karsten, who actually sent me a really nice email in the week. He's planning on making a trip over here August September time, hopefully to see some game action in the Super League. And he said, "What a game! Leeds won, but that was one hell of a game. Better than every NRL game of the first round in all aspects. International class, and Leeds earned that win with an outstanding defensive effort. Saints were good, but made some stupid mistakes."
Yeah, Mitchell Darts said, despite having heart in mouth for the last 10 minutes, still absolutely enjoyed the game. Plenty of luck in a couple of Leeds tries, and the Grace to Barber try was pretty fantastic. But with thanks to Zeb and Matty Parcell for sealing the win. Won't be the last tight and tense game between these two this season.
Biggie8383 in brackets Graham, who is a new one, so thanks for getting in touch, Graham, said, "Missing key players, but a team performance from the Rhinos. Brad Singleton was immense tonight. Myler growing into his lead shirt. Moon great again. Looking forward to next week's game."
Yeah, Cutthroat Jake said, thanks to the real world and a dead skybox, I was relegated to listening to the match on the radio. With all our injuries and losing more on the night, it says a lot about the team's bloody-minded resilience and refusal to give in. Plus, what is it with Ash Handley and Saints? He seems to love scoring tries against them.
What if his skybox was dead? How was he watching MTV?
No, I've lost that one.
The Real World, wasn't that like one of the early
Oh,
reality
right,
TV
okay.
shows on MTV?
See, we
Anyway.
never had that as that sort of era. So MTV jokes completely lost.
John Hamilton said, great match, can't quite believe Leeds won. At times they were terrible. They looked underweight up front to start with, but some titanic efforts kept us in the game. A bit of luck as well. Roby made his first handling error of 2018, just out from the Leeds line. Really pleased with the attacking response to Barber's second try, showed a good attitude. Moon was unlucky not to get man of the match. Parcell was quality as usual.
Rich Wilkinson, another week, another great win for Leeds. It's weird as Saints fans are half ref faulting, but not blaming the ref for the loss. Not pretty, but proper gritty from Leeds. We are tough and never say die. That's why we win trophies. That's why we are champions. With more troops on deck, we are genuine contenders. The talkers will talk up Cass and whoever, but we'll be there or thereabouts come the end of the year.
St. David said, whilst we have scored plenty this season, the key to success has been defence, discipline and a low error count. Those basics were absent. We played well in the first half and were unlucky with at least Leeds' second try, but we were poor after the break. Even so, we were still in it with minutes to go. Compensating for Big Al's meters is not going to be easy. Getting Knowles back next week will help.
And Phil Nadine, a great game to watch as a neutral. Both teams played well with some great defence on both sides, but in the end, Leeds' utter disregard to giving up helped them edge out. Good job as it helped with my Super Brew.
Not mine. Do you know what? This game was really enjoyable to watch. I was out on Friday night. I watched it when I got home, and normally if I do that, I'll fall asleep at about half time. But this game didn't put me to sleep. As tired as I was, I really enjoyed it. And I think the one thing I would say about the way the game went was to talk about the game in its whole before any speak about any individual performances and pieces of skill, because there were some good ones of those.
Definitely.
Was I thought for the first time this year, Saints started to show some panic in their attacking play, and they ended up with possibly too many ball players on the field at the same time, and none of them were doing the wrong things. They were all doing some good things. It's just they weren't all doing them together. So you ended up with a lot of balls going out to, say, forwards and centres and that sort of stuff, but you didn't quite get the defenders being drawn in by good interplay between the ball players. And when you ended up with, I think at one point, Barber, Lomax, Richardson, Tharge and Wilkin on at the pitch at the same time, all kind of wanting to run the show. It kind of was a bit of too many cooks spoil the broth to an extent, even though individually they all did some really nice stuff. Maybe Lomax aside, he didn't have a sterling game. But the moment that really stood out for me was midway through the second half. Luke Thompson, who, listeners to SLP will know that I've been bigging up for nearly a year now, and I'm really impressed with, even though he wears that awful shirt. He threw a really loose offload that felt like a desperation play when they were maybe 2 scores down still before Barber's try that set things up really nicely for the last few minutes until Parcell polished it off. But he threw a loose offload, and that was something that was maybe in his game a bit when he was first coming through, and kind of why he was in and out of the Saints side, I thought. But since Holbrook's been there, he's revolutionised his game to be a lot more solid performer and a lot more consistent performer, and not doing silly things like this. And then in this game, he did the silly thing, and I thought, oh shit, they've kind of lost their heads a bit here. They've kind of lost their edge, and it was just an error fest sort of throughout all that period of time from St Helens. Whereas Leeds were clinical in everything they did. They did just enough to score enough more points. They defended really well, but they were clinical with all the chances they got, which is something that St Helens were not in this game.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I felt it did just look like St Helens were just chasing it that little bit
Mm.
almost too much. And if they'd actually relaxed and calmed down a bit, they might have got it. But I definitely agree with your point on the ball players. Everybody was sort of trying to have a go at it, and they kind of needed, just a bit more. I suppose it's leadership really, that someone to just take over all charge and say, right, okay, you get over there, you get over there, here we go. But and I think that's something that Richardson will be able to work on as he grows into the stature of being the halfback.
Yeah, exactly, because it's something that probably Matty Smith, that might be the one and only area that is kind of ahead of Danny Richardson, and I would hope Matty Smith's teaching Danny Richardson those sorts of things, really for the benefit of the Super League and for the English game and that sort of stuff. One thing to note before we talk about some of the great performances from Leeds was Leeds' shirt. Now, if you remember in the opening round against Warrington, the back of this shirt kind of looked like all the players' names were being crossed out, but they've rectified that now. They've put a block background behind the players' names so you can actually read them rather than looking like they've been crossed out. So that is a positive from the shirt setting out perspective, because we cover all the important stuff here on SLP. But in terms of um, players for Leeds, Richie Myler, to me, has just really grown into a player who can organise now.
Yeah,
Um,
it never used to be a feature of his game.
well, when he started at Warrington, obviously, well, he didn't start at Warrington. When he moved to Warrington, that was his real big Super League push in a team that was competing for stuff. He played second fiddle to Lee Briers. He was the support man, effectively. And then, obviously, Briers left, and I think he never quite moved on from being the support man, doing the flashy occasional bits of skills, and the try he scored in this game was a support man try. Really good play from him there. But at Catalan, Luke Walsh was kind of the organizer. I think here, with Joel Moon being such a free spirited player, um, and the way Leeds kind of play with a loose, without really a structure,
Yeah,
it makes him into an organising player, just like Danny Maguire turned himself into in the last couple of years of his time at Leeds as well. And I think he's really flourishing. He's been absolutely fantastic, I think, Richie
and
Myler
he's
for the
dovetailed
Rhinos.
really well with Joel Moon. The two of them just between they fitted in really well, because I thought this was going to be almost a disaster, because I thought they were effectively trying to do the same slot, but the way that um, Richie Myler has adapted has done really well, and I think that Joel Moon, I think he really gave them something on Friday, that he was just constantly popping up in places, and if you were looking at it from the opposition side, he was being annoying, and
He's
that's
hard to read, isn't he,
yeah,
as a halfback? He's not like all the other halfbacks in the league, so he's hard to read. I suppose the only other one that's similar-ish maybe is Kelly. He pops up in
yeah.
unusual places compared to the very structured play that rugby league tends to have for most of the game these days.
Yeah. Moving on to some of the sort of more individual plays, I thought the first Barber try was quite clever. And I think, so actually, overall, looking at the first half, Saints just didn't quite capitalise when they had that momentum and they had those
Yeah, because they were the
opportunities.
better team in terms of getting
Yeah.
up the field, creating chances. They just were making mistakes. Yeah, I agree.
And then looking at the Swift try, I mean, that was all that magic from Richardson and the crazy inside play that he just had no right to make. It was just any other team, you would have just seen them go out and effectively probably get pushed into touch and just live with it and, oh, fair enough. But that was real vision to even think about that.
Well, it wasn't just Richardson. I think Swift did a great job in that try as well. And was it Makinson's hands as well?
Yeah, the little
Makinson
scoop.
quickly got it back to Richardson, didn't he? Um,
And then it sort of came on. They just didn't. They had several penalties and several opportunities. They just didn't do anything with it at
no,
that
and
point.
Roby made a few mistakes, gave away a number of penalties in this game as well. Normally, Roby gets away with his hand in at the ruck because he's James Roby, but maybe for whatever reason this week he didn't get away with it.
And then I've just put for the Leeds try that the first one that JJB really milked the penalty, and which is not surprising because it's Jamie Jones Buchanan. That's what he does. He's done it for years.
Well, I think from I probably was a penalty. The one that Saints fans probably have more of an issue with will have been the Richie Myler try that came off the back of, well, why they would have a reason to be miffed, I think, isn't actually why they think they're miffed. They're annoyed because Saints were 12-6 ahead at that point, were in great attacking position for almost the rest of that half, the last second half of that first half,